I've heard people say life changes slowly, like a sunrise creeping into the sky. But mine didn't. My life snapped in half in a single moment the night my father didn't come home. I still remember how my mother paced our small apartment, a ceiling fan wobbling above us, the evening traffic humming through the open window. She kept checking the doorway as if he would just appear and explain everything away. But he didn't. By morning, the police came with the news no child ever wants to hear. I was 15. Too young to understand death, but old enough to feel the world crumble around me. For weeks, our apartment became a quiet museum of memories. My father's jacket still hanging by the door, his half-read book still on the table, the warm smell of his cologne still trapped in the air. My mother began drifting through our days like a ghost. I tried to be strong for her, but grief has its own weight. Mine pressed on my chest every night when the lights went off and the city noise died down. 3 months after the funeral, something changed in her. She started dressing differently, cooking again, humming songs from her childhood. At first I thought it was healing, maybe a small sign that light was finding its way back into our home. But there was something else too, something new in her eyes, a spark I didn't recognize. Then one Saturday afternoon, she sat across from me with her hands clasped, as though she was about to confess something. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said. For a moment, I froze. I knew what she meant, but part of me hoped I misunderstood. I wasn't ready. My heart was still tangled in grief, still searching for my father's footsteps in every corner of the house. But my mother kept smiling that hopeful smile, the one that begged me not to ruin the moment. The man she wanted me to meet was named Jason. He worked in construction, she said. He had a good heart, she added. He made her laugh. He made her feel seen. She told me all this as if she needed to convince herself to. When he walked into our living room for the first time, something in the air changed. Jason wasn't tall, but he held himself like a man who needed the world to acknowledge him. His handshake was firm, almost too firm, and his smile never reached his eyes. He looked at me the way a person looks at something they plan to move around later, like furniture, not family. "Nice to meet you," he said, but his voice felt practiced. My mother, glowing beside him, didn't seem to notice. That night, while she cooked actual dinner, not the instant noodles we'd lived on for weeks, Jason walked around our apartment, the way people walk through a place they already own. He scanned the walls, the furniture, the tiny hallway leading to the bedrooms. His eyes lingered too long on my father's framed picture. "Still got his things up," he muttered. "Must be hard to move on. My father had only been gone 3 months. I felt something cold tighten in my stomach. At dinner, he laughed loudly, talked loudly, filled every quiet space with stories about his job, his friends, his strength, his plans. He didn't ask me a single question, not one. He just talked over me like I was part of the furniture. But my mother laughed. Really laughed. A sound I hadn't heard since before the tragedy. And for a moment I questioned myself. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe grief was making me see things that weren't there. But later that night, as he walked out the door, Jason placed his hand on my shoulder, not gently, not kindly, and said, "You'll get used to me." Used to him? I didn't like the way he said it. I didn't like the weight of his hand. I didn't like the confidence in his voice. Something in me whispered a warning, a quiet feeling, but strong enough to keep me awake long into the night. I didn't know then that I should have listened, because the man who replaced my father hadn't stepped into our lives to heal anything. He came to break what was left. Jason didn't fade into our lives, he forced his way in. Within a week, he was at our apartment almost every evening. He brought groceries, fixed shelves that didn't really need fixing, rearranged furniture my father put together with his own hands. Every time he moved something, it felt like he was wiping away a memory, one small piece at a time. My mother said he was being helpful. I said nothing, but inside me, something simmered. One evening, I walked into the living room and saw Jason flipping through my father's old notebook, the one he wrote ideas and quotes in. It wasn't just a notebook. It was the last piece of him that still carried his handwriting, his thoughts, his voice. I felt my chest tighten. "That's not yours," I said, louder than I intended. Jason didn't even look up. Relax. I'm just trying to understand the man your mother married. No harm in that. Yes, there was harm. But my mother, who had just walked in with a pot of stew, only let out a nervous laugh. Jason, come on, she said, gently taking the book from him. Some things are personal. He didn't like that. I saw it in his jaw, the way it tightened before he smiled again. I was only trying to help, he replied, but the warmth in his voice had soured. I started noticing other things. How he always sat at the head of the table. How he spoke for my mother when guests visited. How he made little comments about my habits, how I walked, how I talked, how I left my shoes by the door. Small comments, but sharp enough to graze. This place needs a leader, he said once. A real man to take charge. Take charge. Of what? Of who? He said it while looking straight at me. My mother didn't catch it. She was too busy setting plates down. But I felt the message land, heavy and clear. Around that time, my mother started changing in ways I didn't expect. She smiled less around me, but more around him. She asked for my opinion less and defended Jason more. If he joked in a way that stung, she called him playful. If I disagreed, she said I was still hurting and needed time. But it wasn't time I needed. It was clarity. One night, after the dishes were done, my mother told me Jason had offered to move in with us. I felt the air leave my lungs. In this apartment? I asked softly. Yes, she said, touching my hand. He wants to be here for us. Us. No, he wanted to be here for control. I felt it deep in my bones. But arguing felt impossible. She was convinced Jason was some kind of blessing, someone who brought stability, someone who understood her pain. She said he made her feel safe again. Safe wasn't the word I'd use. Still, I stayed silent, trying to be the mature one everyone expected me to be. But inside, fear had started growing roots I couldn't pull out. 2 nights after he officially moved in, I woke up to voices in the living room. My mother sounded nervous. Jason sounded irritated. Their words were muffled through the wall, but I caught fragments. You don't need to ask me. I'm just saying we should decide together. I know what I'm doing. Then silence, followed by a loud sigh. The next morning, my mother's eyes were swollen. She said she didn't sleep well. Jason was cheerful, whistling while frying eggs like nothing had happened. When he left for work, I sat beside her on the couch. Mom, I whispered, are you okay? She hesitated longer than she should have. Then she nodded, too quickly. I'm fine, she insisted. You worry too much. But her voice trembled, and a spark of fear flickered in her eyes before she blinked it away. That was the first moment I truly realized something was wrong. The second moment came a week later. Jason came home angry, really angry, because some contractor messed up a project. He threw his keys on the table so hard, they slid off the edge. He paced the living room, muttering under his breath, until finally he turned to me. Why is this place so messy? He snapped. It wasn't messy. Not even close. I told him so. Calmly, he stepped toward me. Slowly, deliberately, for the first time. I felt genuine fear tighten around my ribs. And my mother. She stood in the kitchen doorway, frozen, unsure of whose side to choose. That was the night everything quietly shifted. The beginning of the cruelty. The beginning of the unraveling. Jason's anger that night didn't explode. It simmered. That made it even worse. Loud anger is easier to understand. People shout, they cool off, they apologize. But Jason's anger was quiet, methodical, almost thoughtful, like he was planning what to do with it. He stepped close enough that I could smell the cologne he always wore. The one that was too strong, too sharp, like he wanted everyone to feel his presence before they even saw him. You think you're grown now? He asked me. His voice was low, steady. You think you can talk back? Talk back? All I did was correct him. All I did was tell the truth. The apartment was clean. Before I could answer, my mother rushed forward. Nervous smile plastered on her face. Jason, please, she said softly. He didn't mean he raised a hand not to hit her, but to silence her. And somehow that gesture hurt more than a slap. My mother's voice died in her throat, and she shrank back like someone had pulled the air out of her. It was the first time I saw her afraid of him. And the moment I saw that, something inside me hardened. Jason walked away, muttering about respect and kids these days, leaving a heavy silence behind him. My mother stood frozen for a few seconds, then turned to me with a shaky smile. "He's stressed," she whispered. "The project he's working on is giving him trouble." Stressed. A convenient explanation. One she repeated often in the following days. Everything became about his stress. His silence. Stress. His temper. Stress. The way he slammed doors. Stress. The way he criticized every little thing I did. And stress became the reason we had to tiptoe around the apartment like guests in our own home. Days turned into weeks, and Jason's presence changed the entire atmosphere. Our once simple apartment filled with my father's memory felt like a stranger's home now. Jason installed a new TV without asking. He replaced the curtains with ones he liked. He threw away my father's old chair because it was taking up space. My mother didn't stop him. She barely protested. Every time I spoke up, she would whisper, "Let him be. He means well." But meaning well doesn't erase discomfort, and discomfort doesn't hide fear. One evening, after dinner, Jason dropped a comment that stuck with me like a thorn. "You're almost grown," he said, staring at me with a strange mix of challenge and authority. "It's time to learn how to behave like a man." Before I could respond, he added, "And in this house, I decide what that means." There it was. The truth behind every move he'd made. He wasn't trying to help us. He wasn't trying to heal a grieving family. He was trying to dominate it. I started staying longer at school library, extracurricular clubs, anywhere I could pretend to be busy. Our home no longer felt like home. It felt like something I needed to escape from. But one memory kept flashing back to me. My father. The way he'd pat my shoulder when he walked past. The way he'd sit with me on the balcony at night, telling me stories about his own father. The way he treated my mother with gentleness, with humor, with admiration. He never tried to be the leader. He simply loved us, and his presence did the rest. Jason was the opposite. He wanted control so badly that everything he touched became tense. The turning point came on a Wednesday night. My mother had cooked fried rice. Jason said it was too soft. She apologized and offered to make something else. He ignored her apology and refused to touch the food. My mother kept apologizing anyway, and watching her do that felt like someone was squeezing my heart. Later, when she tried to talk to him, he pushed past her, not roughly, not violently, but with enough force to make her stumble a little. I saw it. He saw me see it. And for the first time, Jason smirked at me. A slow, deliberate smirk, like he wanted me to understand something. This is my house. She listens to me, and you can't do anything about it. That smirk stayed with me all night. It stayed with me in school the next day. It stayed with me in the silent moments when my mother avoided my eyes. That's when I knew Jason wasn't just cruel. He enjoyed it. And somehow my mother was slipping further under his control. Something had to change. But I didn't know then that change was coming sooner than I expected, and it wasn't going to be gentle. The incident with Jason pushing my mother stayed with me like a bruise that never faded, even when she insisted it was just a misunderstanding. The look in her eyes told a different story, one she wasn't ready to admit, not even to herself. After that night, Jason's behavior changed, but not in the way anyone hoped. It wasn't explosive cruelty. It was strategic, controlled. He picked his moments the way a hunter picks his targets. Low, deliberate, certain. And my mother? She drifted further into silence, the kind of silence that doesn't protect you, but suffocates you. One Friday evening, I came home to find Jason rearranging the living room again. He had dragged the couch to the opposite wall, moved the rug, and pushed the dining table into a corner. I watched him shift things around like he was the landlord, not a man who'd known us for barely 2 months. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Fixing this place," he said. "Your father didn't know how to organize a home. Everything in here was misplaced." My body froze. My father? Misplaced things? The man who color-coded files for fun? The man who taught me how to fold shirts so neatly they looked store-bought? No, Jason wasn't insulting the apartment. He was insulting the man whose shadow he could never live up to. "Don't talk about my father like that," I said quietly. He turned. His eyes hardened, but a smile stretched across his face like a mask. "You're too attached to the past," he replied. "If you're going to grow into a man, you need to move forward." Forward. His favorite word. But moving forward shouldn't feel like erasing everything behind you. My mother rushed into the room then, grocery bags in hand. When she saw the tension between us, she forced a smile. "Let's all sit down," she said. "It's been a long week." Jason didn't move. He stared at me a moment longer, then walked past me, brushing my shoulder with just enough pressure to make sure I felt it. Later that night, while he showered, my mother pulled me aside. "Please," she whispered, "don't provoke him." Provoke him? I wasn't provoking him. I was defending my father's memory, but the fear in her voice, the fear in her eyes. I swallowed my words. "Okay," I said, though my chest felt tight. My father used to say courage sometimes meant speaking up, but sometimes it meant waiting for the right moment. I didn't know which one this was supposed to be. I only knew my mother was shrinking before my eyes, and Jason was growing louder even in his silence. The cruelty wasn't always physical. Sometimes it was in the questions he asked. Why didn't you clean the kitchen properly? Why did you leave your shoes there? Why do you eat so slowly? Why are you home so late? Why do you always have an attitude? None of these questions were about cleanliness, punctuality, or respect. They were about control, about dominance, about reminding me I had no power in the house he believed belonged to him, and my mother kept trying to smooth everything over. Like her apologies could fill the cracks Jason was creating. One night, things took a turn I could never forget. I was in my room studying when Jason barged in without knocking. He looked irritated, though. He always looked irritated. "You didn't lock the front door properly," he said. "I did," I replied calmly. "You just have to pull it twice." He moved closer, too close. "Don't correct me," he said. "I'm not correcting you," I said. "I'm just explaining." He stared at me for a long second, his jaw tight. Then he stepped back, gave a dry laugh, and said, "You're just like your father thinking you always know better." My heart thudded. Not because of the words, because of the tone. It wasn't frustration. It was resentment. Deep, simmering resentment. I didn't say anything. I couldn't trust my voice. He walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. A few minutes later, I heard my mother's voice from the living room, soft, pleading, asking him to calm down and let things go. He didn't yell. Instead, he spoke in that low, controlled voice that felt even worse. "You're too soft on him," Jason said. "He needs discipline. A boy without discipline becomes a man with no direction." A beat of silence. Then my mother said something that made my chest ache. "He's all I have." Jason's reply was cold. "And I'm here to fix that." Fix that. Fix what? Her loyalty to her son? Her memories of her husband? Her identity? That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. Jason didn't want a family. He wanted ownership. Of our home, of my mother, of the space my father once filled. And as long as he stayed, things would only get worse. I just didn't know how much worse. Not yet. Jason's cruelty didn't hit all at once. It spread quietly, steadily, until it filled every corner of our home. And the worst part? My mother was beginning to accept it as normal. I saw it in small things. She stopped wearing the bright dresses my father bought her. Jason preferred simple colors, so she switched to plain outfits. She no longer watched her favorite evening shows. Jason said they were a waste of time, so she stopped turning on the TV. She laughed less, moved cautiously, chose her words like someone walking across broken glass. One morning, she overcooked the eggs. Jason didn't yell, but his disappointment weighed heavier than shouting. "You had one job," he said quietly. "One job." My mother, who worked 2 shifts to keep us going after my father died, reduced to one job because of eggs. I felt something burn inside my chest. After Jason left for work, I found her standing by the sink, staring out the window, her shoulders trembling. "Mom," I said gently, "you don't have to let him speak to you like that." She didn't turn. She didn't blink. She only whispered, "He's trying. We just need to understand him." Understand him. The words felt like a knife cutting through the last thread of hope. Jason wasn't trying. He was training. Training her to submit. Training me to disappear. That afternoon, I went to see my father's closest friend, Mr. Harris, who lived 2 buildings away. A calm, older man with a steady voice and eyes that always saw deeper than you expected. He opened the door and immediately noticed something was wrong. "You look tense," he said, stepping aside to let me in. I sat on the couch, and for a moment I couldn't speak. The weight of everything pressed against my throat, but when I finally opened my mouth, the truth spilled out, the anger, the fear, the way the apartment didn't feel like home, the way Jason's presence swallowed every room. Mr. Harris listened without interrupting. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "I knew the day would come when your mother tried to move on," he said. "But I didn't think she would choose a man who feeds on power." I swallowed hard. Hearing someone else say it made it more real. "What should I do?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair, fingers pressed together. "You're young," he said gently, "but you're not powerless. Watch closely. Protect your mother when you can, and never ignore your instincts. A man like Jason doesn't stop. He escalates." His words echoed in my mind long after I left. That evening, when I returned home, the atmosphere felt different. Heavy, tense. Jason was sitting on the couch with a beer in his hand, something he had never drunk in the house before. My mother sat at the far end, hands folded tightly, eyes lowered. He looked up as I entered, and there was something sharp in his gaze. "Where were you?" he asked. I breathed slowly. "With Mr. Harris." "Huh?" He took a sip, eyes still locked on me. "You didn't mention you were going out." "I didn't know I had to," I said. The room went still. My mother's breath caught. Jason set the beer down slowly, carefully, like he was setting down something fragile he planned to crush later. "You live under this roof," he said calmly, "so you follow my rules." "My father paid for this apartment," I replied before I could stop myself. A thin smile slid across his face. "Dangerous. Cold. And your father isn't here anymore," he said. My heart thudded. My mother's hand flew to her chest. "Jason," she started, but he raised his hand again, and she fell silent instantly. He stood up and walked toward me, step by step, like he was testing how far he could push. "You think you can talk to me any way you want?" he asked softly. "You think your mother will always shield you?" I didn't step back. I refused to give him that satisfaction. My muscles trembled, but my feet stayed planted. He stared at me for a long moment, then leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "You're not a man yet," he murmured, "but you'll learn what respect means in this house." He pulled away, grabbed his beer, and walked into the bedroom, leaving a trail of tension in his wake. My mother rushed to me, grabbing my hand. "Why did you say that?" she whispered, tears in her eyes. He was already upset. "I'm tired of tiptoeing," I said. "This is my home, too." She shook her head, wiping her cheeks. "It's better when we don't provoke him." There it was again. The lie she repeated to survive, the lie she needed to believe. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my father, how he treated us, how different our home used to feel. And I wondered how long we could keep living like this. Because Jason wasn't slowing down. He was preparing for something, and I could feel it coming. A shift, a cracking point, a storm. I just didn't know when. The storm arrived on a night that began like any other quiet. Uneasy, filled with the kind of tension you feel even before you can explain it. I came home from school and found my mother cooking dinner, moving slower than usual. Her shoulders were hunched, her movements stiff, like her body carried a weight she couldn't put down. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Jason wasn't home yet. The apartment felt lighter in his absence, like someone had opened a window and let the air circulate. "Mom," I said gently, "are you okay?" She stirred the pot on the stove, but didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "I just want peace," she whispered. "I don't want fights in this house." The way she said this house felt wrong. It wasn't just a house. It was the home she and my father built together. Now it felt like foreign territory. "Mom," I said softly, "you don't deserve to live like this." She froze, just for a second. Then she shook her head, blinking away a tear. "Let's just get through tonight," she said. But even she didn't believe her own words. Jason came home later than usual, his footsteps heavy on the stairs before the door even opened. He stepped into the apartment smelling of sweat and cheap alcohol, stronger than the beer he'd had before. His shirt was slightly untucked, his eyes cold and unfocused. My mother stiffened instantly, like a soldier bracing for battle. Jason tossed his bag onto the couch and looked directly at me first. "Not her? Me. Why isn't the trash taken out?" he asked. I pointed toward the balcony. "I took out the kitchen trash. The bags outside are from yesterday." "You told me to leave them because you wanted to sort through?" He waved his hand sharply, cutting me off. "Excuses." My mother stepped in quickly. "Jason, it's fine. I'll handle it." He turned to her slowly, like her voice irritated him. "You always defend him," he said. "That's the problem." "No," she replied gently. "He's just a kid." He scoffed. "He acts like a man when he talks back." I felt my jaw tighten, but I forced myself to stay quiet. I knew how quickly he could twist anything I said. Jason walked to the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat down heavily, staring at the plate my mother had set for him. "What's this?" he asked. "Rice and chicken," she said. "You like it?" He poked it with his fork. "It looks dry." My mother swallowed hard. "I can warm it, don't bother." He shoved the plate aside and leaned back in the chair, rubbing his forehead. My heartbeat thudded in my chest. This wasn't normal stress. This wasn't a tired man. This was someone looking for a target. He suddenly lifted his head and stared at me again. "You think you can go around the neighborhood talking about me?" he asked. My breath caught. My mother turned sharply. "What?" I whispered. Jason stood slowly, walking toward me with deliberate steps. "I heard you were at Harris Place again today," he said. I took a step back. "I wasn't there today. Don't lie," he snapped. "I'm not lying," I said, voice shaking but controlled. My mother stepped between us. "Jason, please stop." But he wasn't listening. He shoved her aside, not violently, but with enough force that she stumbled into the table, her hands slamming against the edge. "Mom," I rushed to her. Jason's chest was heaving now, like he was fighting with something inside him, anger, insecurity, a need for control. He couldn't hide anymore. "You want to disrespect me in my own home?" he demanded. "It's not your home," I said before I could stop myself. Everything stopped. The room, the air, my heartbeat. Jason's expression shifted slowly, darkly. His jaw clenched, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Aha," he whispered. "There it is." My mother grabbed my arm, shaking her head desperately. "Please," she begged. "Please don't say anything else." But Jason had already made up his mind. He stepped forward again. "You think you're a man because you can talk back?" he said. "You think you can challenge me?" "I'm not challenging you," I said. "I'm protecting what's left of my family." He flinched. Just slightly. Then he grabbed the front of my shirt. My mother screamed and rushed toward us, pulling at his arm. "Jason, stop." His grip tightened. His face twisted with anger. "You need to learn," he growled. "You need to learn who makes the rules here." I felt my head spin. The world blurred. My mother's voice was shaking, terrified. "Jason, please," she cried. "Let him go. Let him go." And for the first time, I genuinely thought he wouldn't. I genuinely thought he was capable of going further than he ever had. But something interrupted him. A loud, sharp knock on the door. So sudden, it shook all of us. Jason froze. My mother froze. The knocking continued, urgent, forceful. "Open this door," a voice called. Jason released me, stepping back with a look I had never seen before. Fear, real fear. Something was about to change. Something big. Something none of us were prepared for. The storm wasn't coming anymore. It had arrived. The pounding on the door didn't stop. It grew louder, faster, like whoever stood outside wasn't just knocking, they were demanding entry. Jason's face drained of color. My mother covered her mouth. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "Who is that?" Jason muttered, stepping back from me as if the door itself had turned into a threat. The knocking came again, 3 sharp, deliberate thuds. "Open this door now." It was a man's voice, firm, confident, unshaking. Jason looked at the hallway like he was calculating whether to answer or escape. My mother rushed forward. "Don't open it," she whispered sharply. "Jason, please don't make things worse." Ignoring her, Jason moved toward the door. But before he reached it, I stepped beside my mother, both of us tense, both of us bracing. He yanked it open. Standing outside was Mr. Harris, his shirt slightly unbuttoned, sweat on his forehead, eyes burning with something fierce. He looked at Jason first, then at me, then at my mother. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice low but firm. Jason stiffened. "This is none of your business, old man." Mr. Harris stepped inside without asking for permission, brushing past Jason like he wasn't impressed or intimidated. He walked straight up to me and placed a hand on my shoulder, gently checking if I was okay without needing words. I nodded, though my throat was tight. My mother finally found her voice. "How did you know something was wrong?" "I saw your son earlier when he came back from school," he said softly. "He didn't look well. Something felt off. When I passed by just now, I heard shouting." Jason scoffed loudly. "So now you're spying on us?" Mr. Harris turned to him slowly. "No. I'm looking out for the boy his father trusted me with." Something dangerous flickered in Jason's eyes. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You think you can just walk in here and disrespect me in my home?" Mr. Harris didn't break eye contact. "This isn't your home." Jason's jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. For a moment I thought he'd swing. He had that look, the look of a man who hated being challenged. "Get out," Jason said through his teeth, "before you regret it." My mother let out a small gasp. "Jason, stop, please." But Mr. Harris stood his ground. "I'm not leaving," he said steadily, "until I know they're safe." The words hung in the air like electricity. Jason stepped closer to him, inches away. The tension between them was thick enough to choke on. 2 men locked in a silent war, one driven by ego, the other by protection. "You must think you're brave," Jason said. "I'm not brave," Mr. Harris replied calmly. "I'm just not afraid of men who prey on fear." Jason's nostrils flared. He shoved Mr. Harris' shoulder hard. My mother gasped. I stepped forward instinctively, but Mr. Harris didn't react with anger. He straightened slowly, looked Jason in the eye, and said, "Touch me again, and I call the police. And believe me, they'll be very interested in what your neighbors have been hearing at night." Jason froze. A crack of uncertainty appeared behind his anger. Mr. Harris continued, voice calm but firm. "You should think carefully about your next move. Because the moment I step outside, I'm calling for help if they're in danger again." Jason swallowed. The facade was slipping. The confidence was cracking. My mother whispered, "Jason, please stop." He turned to her suddenly, eyes sharp and accusing. "This is your fault. You let people interfere in our home." "Our home?" she repeated quietly, something breaking inside her voice. "This is the home I built with my late husband. You walked into it and started tearing it apart." Jason blinked. He wasn't expecting that. Not from her. My mother's shoulders straightened. She wasn't trembling this time. "You don't own me," she said softly. "You don't own my son, and you don't get to decide how we live." A silence rippled through the room. Jason looked from her, to me, to Mr. Harris. His breathing was sharp. His fists were clenched. His confidence wavered. For the first time, he was the one cornered. Then he grabbed his bag abruptly. "Fine," he muttered. "I'm leaving." He stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. But the moment he was gone, my mother collapsed into a chair, tears spilling down her face. Not from fear this time, but from release, from relief. From all the emotions she had held inside for too long. Mr. Harris placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, then turned to me. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Men like him never leave without coming back." Chill crawled up my spine, because deep down, I knew he was right. Jason wasn't gone. Not yet. And the real battle was still ahead. The apartment felt different after Jason left, lighter, quieter. Almost like the walls themselves had taken a breath they'd been holding for months. But the relief didn't last. A heavy silence hung in the air, the kind that tells you the story isn't finished. Not yet. My mother wiped her face with trembling hands, trying to steady her breathing. Mr. Harris stayed close, but respectfully kept a little distance, giving her room to gather herself. "Thank you," she whispered to him without lifting her head. "You don't have to thank me," he replied gently. "You just have to protect yourself." And him. His eyes shifted to me. My mother nodded, but I could see it, the guilt dripping through her, heavy and thick. She wasn't just shaken. She was ashamed. She finally stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city lights, those countless bright dots scattered across the night like reminders that millions of lives were unfolding around us, each with its own story. Ours was just one of them, but it felt impossibly large in that moment. "I don't know how I let it get this far," she said quietly. "I thought I was choosing stability. I thought I was doing what was best for us." Her voice faltered. Vulnerability stretched across every word. Mr. Harris stepped closer, his tone soft but steady. "People make mistakes when they're grieving, when they're lonely, when they're trying to survive. There's no shame in that. What matters is what you do now." She turned around slowly, eyes full of regret. "He changed me. I kept defending him even when I knew something wasn't right. I failed my son." She looked at me, tears rising again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have listened. I should have protected you sooner." Something stirred inside me, something deep, because this was the apology I had needed but never expected. This wasn't her trying to justify anything. This was her taking responsibility. I walked to her and hugged her. She held me tight like she feared letting go. "It's okay, Mom," I murmured. "We're safe now." Mr. Harris rested a hand on my shoulder. "You both are stronger than you think." For a moment, everything felt peaceful, until the door handle clicked. All three of us snapped our heads toward it. The lock twisted slowly, deliberately, like someone on the other side was trying to be quiet but failing. My mother grabbed my arm. Mr. Harris moved forward instinctively, positioning himself between us and the door. The handle rattled again, harder this time. And then a voice we all recognized. "Open the door now, Jason." My stomach dropped. He wasn't gone. He wasn't even trying to hide the rage in his voice. The doorknob shook violently as if he was seconds away from breaking it. My mother backed up, trembling again. "What does he want?" Mr. Harris didn't move. "He wants control. That's what men like him survive on." Banging began. Loud, aggressive, each slam echoing through the apartment like thunder. "Open up," he shouted. "Let me in." Mr. Harris reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed someone quickly. "Yes," he said into the phone. "It's happening now. We need officers here immediately." Jason's voice grew frantic on the other side. "I know you're in there. Don't make me come through this door." For the first time, he sounded unhinged, desperate, like a man who felt his power slipping away. The banging continued. My mother clutched me tighter. Then, like a miracle, sirens. They were faint at first, but they grew louder, closer, sharper. Jason heard them too. The banging stopped. Moments later, feet pounded down the hallway. Stern voices filled the corridor. "Police, back away from the door." We heard a scuffle, yelling, orders being shouted. The unmistakable noise of someone being pinned against the ground. Then silence. Mr. Harris opened the door cautiously. Two officers stood there with Jason handcuffed, face twisted with fury and disbelief. "He was trying to force his way in," one of the officers said. "A neighbor called earlier about shouting." My mother covered her mouth again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Jason glared at us as he was led away. But for the first time, his anger didn't have power. His voice didn't reach us. His presence didn't control us. He was gone. Really gone. The door closed. My mother sank onto the couch. Mr. Harris sat beside her, steady, grounded, calm. I looked at both of them, and for the first time since my father died, our home felt like ours again. Later, when the officers left and the night settled, my mother whispered, "I don't know how to start over." Mr. Harris smiled softly. "You don't have to start alone." She looked up at him. He looked at me, and for the first time, hope didn't feel far away. It felt possible. It felt real. It felt earned. Because after the cruelty, after the betrayal, after losing my father and nearly losing ourselves, we finally had something that felt like the beginning of healing. And the man who replaced my father, he didn't break us. He just revealed who we needed to become.